Hello, it's Warren Huart. Hope you're doing marvellously well. Please, as ever, subscribe. If you hit the little bell down there, you'll get a notification when we've got a new video. And also, you can go to producelikeapro.com and you can sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. So what are we going to talk about in this episode? We're going to talk about gain staging. This is a very hotly debated and discussed subject over the last few months, both here on YouTube, on Facebook, in forums, and all kinds of fun stuff. I've watched gain staging change dramatically. When I was a kid first coming up in the 80s and the 90s, gain staging meant something completely different to what it does now. When I first started, it was all about signal to noise ratio. So what does that mean? It means that you're printing a signal around about here. And below was tape hiss, an analog signal chain hiss, like tons of equipment. Basically, tape hiss was our biggest problem, but there was all these different things in the chain adding noise. And every time you would bounce the signal, the tape hiss and the noise would get worse and worse and worse. When digital first came out, one of the theories with converters was if you didn't print a hot signal, you would get a degradation in the quality of the sound. Whether that was true or not is kind of immaterial now. Converters are infinitely better. As we have talked about many times before, your average inexpensive converter now can record at the most incredible quality compared with the way of the 80s and the 90s. Now, even the early 2000s, now converters are infinitely better. And if you're printing a decent signal into it that doesn't clip, you're doing a great job. So, what does that mean? Well, number one, you don't have to print hot like you used to. When I open up some of my older sessions from the 90s, I'm printing huge fat tones. And then I put them into my mix template and wow, everything is slamming and just like insane. So if you're working in at least 24-bit, some people now are working in 32-bit, but if you're working in at least 24-bit, you have 144 dBs worth of dynamic range, a massive amount of dynamic range. You really can print little tiny signals to massive signals. I mean, you've got so much room in there. Modern converters, when you're working in 24-bit, have an enormous dynamic range. You're not going to distort them easily unless you are printing ultra hot. So give yourself enough room, enough headroom so that you're not getting any digital clipping when you're going in. Secondly, when you're mixing, the last thing you want to do is have all of your tracks slamming your master bus so you're just in the red the whole time. So make sure you give yourself a lot of headroom going in there. Get a rough mix going, and if it's slamming your master bus too hard, just grab all of the faders simultaneously and bring them down. Give yourself the ability to have a lot of headroom, because that headroom will allow you to be able to do things like parallel mixes. Let's just say you've got your drums, they're hitting your master bus too heavily, but you want to add a parallel bus in there. You're not going to be able to, because you're going to suddenly you're already slamming, you're going to add even more energy, and before you know, your mix bus is just a solid red line of clipping distortion. So give yourself plenty of headroom. Digital is a wonderful world to be mixing in now. We have so much dynamic range, we have so much ability to be able to create incredible mixes. You don't need to slam everything super, super hard. Now, if you are given tracks to mix that are super hot, just turn them down. Just turn them down. Simple as that. You can just pull them down and allow yourself the flexibility of having a lot of headroom. So what I would suggest you do is you keep your faders where they default to in your DAW when you're recording, and then you can monitor your master bus. That will give you a really good idea of just how hot you're printing. Allow yourself the luxury of having enough headroom. It doesn't mean that you want to print a signal which is barely inaudible, of course. Use logic. Print something that is just at a level where you know that you can mix with tons of headroom. It's easy to turn a signal up, especially once you put compression and you start EQing and boosting things and running parallels and saturating and all the other fun stuff that you do. You'll realize that you need that headroom because it starts piling up on your master bus. Remember, if you're mixing and your mix is too quiet, just turn up your monitoring. Don't use your master fader. Don't turn things up. I know that sounds really obvious, But so many of us have made that mistake. If you just got to swing around and just turn that master volume up in your room, then do that if it's too quiet. Don't use your master bus to turn up your mix. Simple as that. I know that sounds really obvious to many of us, but I think when you're a beginner, you see that as your volume control for monitoring. No, that is what we're going to be printing through, that master bus. So we want to have enough headroom in it so we can do whatever we like. So we don't clip and we can have fun with plugins and, parallel compression and multi-effects and all the other fun things. Okay, thank you ever so much for watching. Please, as ever, subscribe. Go to Produce Like a Pro, sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. And of course, click that little bell down there. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and I'll see you all again very soon.